Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Fear the Walking Dead reviews, except not. This is the first episode here on the playback of reviewing the Walking Dead comic book.
Yep.
By Mr. Robert Kirkman, Volume 1, Days Gone By. Art by Mr. Tony Moore, the original writer and artist of The Walking Dead. He's on this for Volume 1, and then we have a switch up for artist for Volume 2. You'll see. Marina, you've never read this comic book.
No, until now.
But
this is the only one I've read so far.
Okay, great.
But I've seen the entire Walking Dead series.
I love it.
And Fear the Walking Dead.
Great perspective of being a TV fan, but hasn't explored the comic book or the source material or whatever. So this is awesome because I loved this comic book back in the day. Mm-hmm. I've reread it multiple times, and after hearing you talk about it briefly and rereading it, I have problems with it.
Yeah.
But overall, this came out in 2003. Mm-hmm. This has one writer and one artist. It's not a writer's room of television writers. It's not a committee of TV executives or whatever calling shots. I think it's pretty good for an independent comic book. And a lot of the ideas in this is essentially all of season 1. Yeah. This is everything, and even Shane dies at the end of this. Yeah. He does not make it to the farm in season 2, which is awesome. Yeah. Which is awesome. But Shane's also a great character. Yeah. So because it's one guy, one voice, sometimes characters can sound similar. Mm-hmm. If that makes sense. They can sound like they're coming from the same brain.
They do.
They do. But
there's no dialogue differences or syntax changes or
right. But
speech pattern.
Correct. But I think that there's a lot of great ideas, and the stuff that I love from Walking Dead is when characters, we've talked about this before, are competent, but it's just like they get overwhelmed by numbers of zombies or nature or Yeah. And I love when characters.
This is already more realistic in terms of zombies than Fear the Walking Dead ever is.
Yes. The other thing I love is that characters in this comic, and to me it's a theme that sort of keeps going, is they explain themselves and their thought processes to one another out loud. They catch everybody up. Like Rick is like, this is what I'm thinking, this is what we need to do, this is why. This is, his wife Lori will say, this is what I'm afraid of and this is why, Yeah. And they really have conversations that...
and you have to, right? Because it's, how else are you going to learn?
Yeah, and they feel real, but sometimes they don't feel sophisticated or quotable, if that makes sense. A grandiose speech in a TV show or a movie will always be
that would be an entire panel of
people dialogue. Just kind of being real and stuff. So what'd you think? Hit me with it hard, Marina.
It's not better than the TV show. The TV show is a big improvement on the comic book. Mm-hmm. And also, but I don't read this is the only comic book I've ever read.
Awesome.
So
awesome.
I don't know how comic books are.
Yeah. There are some that are better than this and some that are worse than this.
Okay.
So that's of no help to you.
Yeah. But so just like anything else.
Yeah, just like anything else. Exactly.
Yeah.
So
I see why they made the changes in the TV show that they did, because there's way too many characters in the camp that are just very similar to each other.
Sure.
And
Amy and Andrea.
Yeah, Amy and Andrea and Donna. I see why they got rid of her, because it's who cares?
And Carol.
She has twins who are I don't care about them.
But Carol also has...
has Sophia. But she's not... She's barely a character at all. She says 2 words the whole time. Mm-hmm. So I see why they gave her the abusive husband, and they kind of combined her with Donna.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, because it was there's too many white people, I can't.
And they're all sort of drawn, and this is
they're all drawn similarly.
Yes, it's
I could barely tell. Well, and also never having read a comic book before, it was very hard for me to tell the difference between Shane and Rick in the art.
Sure.
At times I would have to go back and be wait, who is which one?
Sure.
And Lori, kind of looks like Rick too, and it's
the way that faces are put together. I mean, Tony Moore, I think, is a really good artist, but he has a cartoony style. Yeah. And that's fine for a cartoony comic book. That's fine for. Do you know what I'm saying?
It felt disjointed to me because the art is so cartoony, but the subject matter is so serious that I was no, I didn't know what genre it was in.
Interesting.
I didn't know if it wanted me to be scared or not,
or if it's tongue in cheek.
Yeah.
Kind of.
You know what? Because I've looked at your I've done this to your comic books.
Yes. Other ones that I have.
Other different ones. Like, I've literally, like, done this and looked at pictures. Mm-hmm. And there's been, like, Batman ones that are, like, very, like, being like, oh, God. Like, like, that's very traumatic.
Yeah.
And, like, superhero ones and, just, like, that are, like, very adult. They're very clearly adult.
Sure. And I think that a great artist, and I think that Tony is a really good artist, but I think that
it's not bad.
That artists are like they're actors in the sense that they also get cast on projects. You know, like the writers. Sometimes a company will. If Robert Kirkman, I forget exactly how this was created, but Robert Kirkman may have pitched this to Image, and Image is a comic book company that is not Marvel or DC Comics, and they work this way. They take a pitch, and if they like it, they may pay you to do it, but you still retain the rights because it's an independent company, and that's sort of how it started. Whereas if you go do something for Marvel Comics, which Robert Kirkman has done, he's created characters like that, they own the rights to that for forever and ever. So like that's how Robert was able to sell this as a TV show later. Yeah. But in the beginning, it may have been Image that sort of paired him up with this artist. Yeah. It may have been Image that went, oh, we have this other artist who's also tried out with his or her portfolio, and then they're looking for a project. Boom, let's put him on this writer, and then you guys take it from there. Or it may have been that Robert Kirkman just knew this artist. Yeah, maybe he just knew. As happens in real life. But
I don't know if this is going to be like a fault, like not able to tell or whatever. But like the difference between Rick and Shane there is like very is a hat and long hair. Yes. Whatever. It doesn't matter.
That's a great example. Yeah. No, and I think that
it's hat and length of hair.
Yes.
So you have to be like, ugh.
I cannot wait until you read Volume 2 and beyond because the art becomes more, I think, appropriate for the genre of the thing. I also believe that a great artist will cast characters in their brain the way that you think of the Walking Dead cast. You think of John Barenthal and Andrew Lincoln are completely different looking human beings as Shane and Rick. Right, so if an artist envisions that, like, you know, differences and then draws them, they can kind of go on the page. It's really, really difficult to create humans and keep them consistent as a comic book artist. And comic art isn't just one drawing that looks cool. It is like continuous storytelling. You know, there's a bunch of pluses and minuses, but I think that the art isn't the strongest aspect of this comic for sure. For sure.
The writing is very good, except that there's no.
I think that the plot is excellent.
The plot is good.
I think the plot and the story is excellent.
Yeah, exactly.
But some of the dialogue suffers.
But the dialogue is rough, and also and there's no there's no difference between the way Hector talks and the way Marina talks. Exactly. Like, everybody speaks the same way. And this scene where they're in the camp, like telling everybody's backstory, is like, boy, talk about just exposition.
Yes.
Central.
I know, and that's a fine line to have these characters go from exposition to
it's like events, exposition.
Exactly. Like, there's a moment where Rick and when we meet Glenn, I mean, all of your favorite characters are a lot of them are introduced in this thing, and Glenn is running through Atlanta, and like they go through a whole thing, and later Rick's like after I think they get back to the camp and that go out again, Rick says, I'm Rick, and I'm sorry we never introduced ourselves, I'm Glenn. Those kinds of things that are difficult to find a natural way to put in there, and I think that the show would find better ways to do it.
And they did,
You know,
The other dumb decision.
No, I love it. I love it.
They changed for the show, and like, good. I'm glad that you did. Is that in the comic book, which I was very surprised about? Carl is the one that kills Shane.
Yes.
Which is fucking stupid.
Nope, I think it's awesome.
Because the emotional consequences of Rick killing Shane are much bigger and much more long-lasting and
more impactful.
Weighted. Because he's an adult who makes an informed decision to murder his best friend who he's known longer than the kid has. So it's like this big, huge decision that's going to weigh on him for the rest of his life.
And we see that in the show.
And I
think in the show, Rick kind of goes to a darker place faster.
Right. Yeah, because he just offed his friend.
Yes.
But if you're a 7-year-old boy with a gun who's literally just learned how to use a gun, and you shoot your dad in defense of your dad, you don't even know what happened. Like, you're a child. There's no there are emotional consequences, but the child is unable and incapable of understanding what loss of life is and choosing to do it anyway. So when Carl grows up in the comic book, he's going to be like, he's easily going to be able, I don't know about easily, but he's going to be able to be like, I was a kid, I didn't know what I was doing, I didn't understand the emotional consequences. So
I'm
it's
not
like,
a murderer.
I'm not really a murderer. I was trying to save my dad. So it's like, who fucking cares? Like, it's like the same thing as like when a kid, God, it's so sad when it's real, but
a toddler.
A toddler like getting a gun in a mom's purse or whatever. It's like, it's very sad, but it's not the kid's fault.
It's not malicious.
Yeah, it's not the kid's fault. So it's like, who fucking cares?
I love this because I can't wait to get into the rest of it, like to see the fallout of this in the comic book.
Yeah.
I mean, I can ruin it in the sense that, to me, Rick doesn't go to the darker place as fast as he does in the show.
Right.
In the comic book, he stays good
Right, of course he did,
longer. Does that make sense? And to me,
because he didn't do this terrible thing.
And to me, that means that it's the first major, other than like certain characters, like there was like those Mexican family in season 1 that were in the camp, and then they kind of went off on their own, and we haven't seen them. Kind of a thing. Like there's certain characters are different. There's no T-Dog in this. There's no Daryl. There's no Merle. But to me, the largest difference between the show and the comic book started at the end of this volume, where it's the decision with everything you just described, and then it really diverges into two different like alternate universes. Robert Kirkman, the writer of the comic, said when the show started that he was going to do that on purpose in the show. He was going to do different things from the comic in the show, because even though a very small percentage of people that read the actual comic book would be watching the show as compared to like new people altogether, he still wanted it to be a thing of like, I don't want to just recreate the comic, and have people that read the comic know like, I'm just waiting for them to catch up, like, because I've experienced this.
You want a
exact
Game
same
of
story.
Thrones it. People who read the books are like,
So he specifically, did things that were different, including keeping Shane alive longer, because there's a moment, I think, that happens in season 1 or season 2 where they go out into the woods and Shane has this like, but he doesn't get killed. And then Shane lives, and then they go to the farm. They go to the farm, and when I was watching the show, I was like, I hate this. Shane should be dead. Because I hated Shane in the show because he was such an antagonistic character,
But also, the writing in that scene in the comic book is not
clunky.
Great.
It's clunky, but again...
I mean, I know months and months are supposed to have gone by, but they're just like out to go hunt, and then all of a sudden he's like, like loses his mind.
Because they lost some people.
And gonna shoot his best friend, and it's like, really?
It's 0 to 60. Yeah. It's 0 to 60 so quick. And
we went from chopping wood to murder. It's like...
In the show, we spent 2 months of learning that Shane had fallen in love with Lori, and that they had sex.
Yeah,
and that happens in the comic too, super quick, but like...
it's like 2 pages in the comic total,
versus
but in the show it's like this.
And that's a lot of time. The benefit of the show is that you get to breathe, you get to really live in these scenes. Yeah. But that's the other thing about if you are a comic book reader of The Walking Dead, especially me. Sometimes when I watch the show, I'm like, get going! Like I want a faster pace because things move really, really fast in the comic. There's a time jump halfway through this to the end where it's just like like weeks and weeks and months, and they're still in that camp in Atlanta, And so up and down, and down.
I mean, the show is better.
All right, well, debatable, because the first season of the show had an episode called Vatos, which was terrible, and written by Robert Kirkman. Written by Robert Kirkman, but oh man, I cannot wait to get into the rest of the comic, because I agree with you, but also disagree super hard. I think it's great that Carl was the character that did that. I think there will be ramifications in Carl's story.
I don't care. He's a kid. I don't care.
But you're right. But you're also right. It's like it's not as relatable and impactful because he's and the other thing too is the show, that kid has aged pretty rapidly, and they even cast him like 10 years old or like 12. Like how
when
old?
He first starts?
How old was he in
this? He's 7.
And in the show,
he looked very young. Like
he looked very like
he looked like he was 7 or 8.
7 or 8 years old, and the actor's still doing the thing. Well, maybe it's just because when did the show first come out? 2010 or something?
Yeah, 10, right?
Yeah, so it's been 7 years. So yeah, now he's like
he looks like a teenager.
He looks like a teenager. In the comic book, he stays a kid because he can stay a kid. They don't have to age an actor up. Anyway, that's Volume 1, Days Gone By of The Walking Dead. Stay tuned because next week we're reading Volume 2. Where is it? Somewhere around here. Do you have it?
It's over there.
And then we're going to be doing one of these each week. So you guys can be reading along with us if you want. If you've never read it, read it, and then we should have said this at the beginning before we just ruined the whole thing. But
spoilers.
Go read Volume 2 and then come back next week, and then we'll talk about it. And tell us if you agree or disagree down below, and tell us if there's stuff that you loved about it or hated about it that we missed, little details and stuff in there, because there's obviously a lot of stuff that happens.
Yeah.
I love Morgan in the beginning of this. Morgan.
Yeah.
Morgan. Great.
Yeah.
Great stuff. All right. We'll be back next week, guys.